Welcome to the Halo Anniversary Multiplayer Discussion panel. My name is David Ellis. I'm a content producer at 343 Industries. I finally got a name tag. I'm very excited about that. Joining
crap.
me,
Where's our name tags?
Where's our name tags?
You know, we ran out of paper. Unfortunately, tone or low. Didn't work out that well. So joining me are some familiar faces you're probably going to know. Frank O'Connor, Franchise Development Director at 343. Mr. Max Hoberman, founder of Certain Affinity. Mr. Chad Armstrong, designer on Halo Anniversary. And Greg Herman, certified genius of all things Halo Anniversary and TU. It's on his business card. I'm not making it up. So kind of starting things off, this weekend we've been able to show 4 multiplayer spaces, 1 firefight mission. Frank, I'm wondering, what was the process like of narrowing down and selecting which maps we were going to include in Halo Anniversary?
I mean, some of it was obviously pretty subjective, what did we like, but there was a pretty simple process of elimination apart from anything else. No maps that were really already on the 360, so obviously there's no point remaking Blood Gulch because there's a fairly perfect version in Reach already, and so on. So it was all maps. The majority of the maps are from Halo 1, obviously. There's one from Halo 2, which is top secret, hasn't leaked and no one's seen it. One from a Halo PC, Timberland, and after that the process was really about what's suitable for the Reach engine, and also what are the kind of gaps in the map selection right now. You know, people wanted more Team Slayer maps and so on and so on. So it was a fairly simple, rigorous process to narrow it down to the basic candidates, but then the selection got hard.
So speaking of that end selection, Max, I want to ask you, and honestly everyone on the panel, how did you and the team go about making these spaces, several of which have been remade before, still feel fresh and new this time around as part of Halo Anniversary?
Yeah, it's definitely a fun process to take an existing space in at least one map that I'm not sure we're allowed to talk about, one that we've actually done multiple times before, and reimagine it. But yeah, for us, it's just, at least as far as the art goes, every time it's just a blank slate. You know, it's just brainstorming. We think about it. We probably do. I hope you guys release the concept art at some point. You do tons of concept drawings, and yeah, I mean, it's a pure free-form brainstorming process. It's really enjoyable, actually.
Yeah, that was actually one of the most enjoyable things for me, is being able to watch this process. There were actually this one map in particular that kind of fundamentally completely changed midway through development on it, and it looks completely different now than it did at one point.
There's actually 2 of them that radically, completely changed, and one of them I think changed 3 different times. But Prisoner was one of them that was, you know, that's Prisoner, woohoo! That was, by the way, Frank was talking earlier about the selection of the maps, and while, you know, it was an interesting process because it was incredibly hotly debated. You know, it wasn't that hard to narrow it down to a fairly small set, but then narrowing it down to the final set was, oh man, that was killer. And Prisoner was one of the ones that was, I guess it was risky is the best way to say it. We really thought that one was a big gamble.
So that's actually a really good transition. My next question would be, for everyone on the panel, were there any personal favorites that you fought for and we just weren't able to make it this time around?
Yeah, definitely. I guess we're also, by extension here, announcing maps that aren't going to be in this list. So there's going to be some awes in the crowd. But
some easy math here.
I really wanted Turf. And Turf is not in the cut.
No one's clapping for Turf, shit. No.
I like Turf.
There was one that I was pushing for really, really hard that didn't make the cut. I'm curious the reaction here. Terminal? Anyone? Yeah, Terminal. See? What did I tell you?
Why didn't it make the cut, Max?
It was Chad said he didn't like Terminal.
Yeah, that's what I said.
No, it was. I mean, that's a good example of a map that isn't really well suited to rapid Team Slayer games, and that was, I think, the discussed reason for it's more objective focus than we needed.
We ended up
Slayer.
picking maps that were more flexible for the larger scope of game types, whereas when Terminal was originally designed, it was designed as a map for 1 flag or 1 bomb, and we just felt not that you can't play 1 flag or 1 bomb on what we're shipping, but Yeah, we decided to go with maps that we knew people played a larger variety of game types on.
My personal favorite, though, is Timberland, actually. I don't know how many people are aware of this, but when Certain Infinity started out and we were working on the Halo 2 Blastacular map pack, when we redid Hang 'em High as Tombstone, if you guys remember that way back, we were actually working on a version of Timberland way back then that unfortunately never saw the light of day. But it was a hell of a lot.
Project.
You remember, yeah. In fact, Chad was working for us at the time. Yeah, so it was a hell of a lot of fun. And when we started on this project, I was right off the bat, I was like, we got to bring it back. We got to do that. We got to do Timberland. Yeah.
I wanted Colossus.
Colossus.
Oh, shockingly enough, flag balancing difficult to replicate.
Yeah, flag balancing, jetpacking. There's a reason it's not.
Conveyor belts that are good for bugs and nothing else.
So we talked a little bit about multiplayer, and you guys just saw some video showcasing the B-roll on Installation 04, which was the firefight mission we announced and are showing off and have playable here at Halo Fest. It's a natural selection for that position to be the one we chose for the firefight mission. Were there any others that came close in the process, or was it sort of always that spot from the mission Halo?
I mean, we did talk about the beach landing sequence, but it's something that, it's almost a firefight map when you play it, so it would have felt a little bit redundant.
I think that was actually the driving decision, since we were working on Anniversary Campaign at the same time, we're actually playing all the Halo 1 levels all over again. And when you sit down and think about it, I mean, the level Halo is just a series of firefight sequences where you roll in and then you fight off wave after wave of Covenant forces. It's kind of the grandfather of firefight almost, so it just made sense.
Yeah, whereas the other multiplayer maps that were hotly debated, we had many lists that were going, people that different items axed out. This one I think was pretty natural from day one.
Pretty much unanimous, I think.
Yeah, no. And from an artistic standpoint, we were working on the multiplayer at Certain Infinity. We weren't working on the single-player stuff, but just looking at an opportunity to do a single-player space and do one that we considered is just incredibly iconic. That was a big, big deal for us. That's why we were considering the beach landing also.
Yeah. So one of the things we other announced as part of Installation 04 is something unique, AI ODST teammates who actually can hop in and fight along with you. I'm curious, where did that idea come from? Guessing some lonely heart.
I'm not going to take credit for that one, but I think it's awesome.
Oh, it is awesome, and it was actually Certain Infinity's suggestion, and we weren't very sure about it, but they were like, no, it's going to be sweet. I mean, it's just like, just like the game, you would have the Marines helping you out, and now you have ODSTs that start posted up on the tower, and if you run out of ODSTs, they'll come back with the reinforcements.
There's always more. I just remember for a little bit of history, right? Towards the end of Reach, we really wanted to do this for our firefight maps, and really were unable to get the AI to respond in a manner that was really convincing. And I think it's just incredible that Certain Infinity stepped up and has delivered this experience where you really feel like you're fighting on a team.
I think a lot of it for us was that we were trying to capture the feel of that old mission, in single player, but in the firefight context. And that's part of it, right? Having your buddies fighting alongside you. So for us, it was just natural, and it didn't feel right without those guys in there.
Yeah, and another weird thing about Installation 04 is it's actually, it's in the game 3 times. It's in classic mode, it's in anniversary mode, and it's in multiplayer via firefight. So and there isn't a single pixel reused really. So it's like three fresh versions.
Easter eggs have always been an important part of the Halo games, and I know Max has a personal affinity for placing Easter eggs in maps.
A certain affinity, if you will. Get it?
I'm curious, is there anything maybe you guys can talk about, hint at, can we expect some Easter eggs on these maps?
I'm watching this video right now to see if one of the Easter eggs pops up.
Nah. It's right there.
We actually had multiple conversations about what we wanted to do for Easter eggs. And some of them I hear people have noticed. I don't know if people have figured out what they are yet. But
anyone out there find any yet so far playing any of the maps?
Yeah, anyone?
See a couple of hands.
A couple of hands out there.
Oh, yeah. One more.
But yeah, we've definitely scattered some Easter eggs in all of the levels actually. So should be fun to see what people think when we
did the Defiant maps. This was our first time for a lot of the guys working on this, and new engine, new tech, and everything. And we were pretty conservative as far as Easter eggs go, but this time around we're a little bit more liberal.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that when I looked at the Easter egg list, not to delve too much into it, was really the tribute and respect that were paid back to the original map designers and the original map designs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that we were able to do something very special with Anniversary that carries that continuity all the way through the product.
That's a hint as to one of the Easter eggs.
True.
We've talked about and announced that each one of the multiplayer maps will feature 2 variants on the disc. One that replicates the classic look and feel and flow of their namesakes. The other taking advantage of some extra spaces to further showcase the Reach sandbox. Where did that idea come from, and what was that process like of building, in essence, in some ways, almost 2 distinct play spaces?
Well, so we had this, we had formed this philosophy where we were working on the campaign side of Anniversary, which was not to change what everybody loves. We wanted to make sure that it was the experience people remembered. And so when we first looked at the multiplayer side, immediately our thoughts kind of went in the same direction, where it's going to be exactly how it was back then. But since we're not working within the Halo 1 engine and we're working with Reach gameplay, we kind of realized pretty quickly that we had to reflect on that and actually make sure that the levels reflected on that. At the same time, we wanted people to be able to experience that super nostalgic version of the gameplay, so we wanted basically both worlds, and the solution came through Forge. So what Certain Affinity did was they explored adding new pathways, modifying some existing ones, and they did so in ways that by either adding or removing Forge pieces, you can get the old map back the way you remembered it. That includes, like, for example, on Battle Canyon, Beaver Creek, there are tunnels on either side of the creek that there are special piles of rocks that you're able to place in Forge to create, the Halo 2 style of the map. All sorts of things like that. And it was basically iterative. It actually started with Damnation, where we were like, is there, if we were to make changes to Damnation to make it better, what would we do? And I think the answer was immediately add a damn bridge. So we started talking about doing that, and they just kind of shoved some pieces in there to stand as a bridge while we were working on it. And we're like, you know what, just add those to Forge. And then we kind of ran with that for all the maps.
On Friday at the Halo Universe panel that we kind of kicked off Halo Fest with, we finally announced the details for the upcoming title update that will offer a lot of additional options for Halo Anniversary to take advantage of. At what point did the team begin planning the update?
That's for you, Greg. Come on.
I'm not going to make you answer that one, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, we'd always known we were going to do a title update. It really was an opportunity for us, once we had transitioned the Reach backend services to 343, for us to start looking at how we're going to maintain and support the community going forward. So we had plans really from before Reach had shipped around the kinds of things we would like to do. And then in the very early stages of the Anniversary celebration planning. And that kind of carried all the way through to actual execution that kind of happened right after that transition.
So I'm wondering what the thought process was, going in a little bit into detail, of coming up with these specific set of features that we've announced for the title update. And if you could kind of go into that a little bit.
Sure. So I think it started with, most design projects start with, here's a list of pie-in-the-sky things that we would really love to do. We cross-checked our own, what we think we wanted with the things that we needed, just for back-end support and for continued sustain efforts. And we also kept a close eye on what the community was talking about. We watched the forums, BungieNet, HBO, etc., and our own Waypoint forums. And from there, we derived a list, and then comes the process where you whittle the list down, and the things that get cut tend to get cut either because scope, it was too much for the amount of resources you have, or the time you have to do it in, or just the fact that it's not so important that there's not something else you should do instead.
So there's been some questions about exactly how this title update is going to work, and we've announced that we're going to be rolling out the beta hoppers to test some of the features post-launching the title update, but before Halo Anniversary hits. I'm wondering, Greg, if you could talk a little bit on the technical side about how the title was constructed so that we can take advantage of all these changes on a game type basis and hopper basis?
Well, I mean, I think you need to look at it like it's just an expanded set of game options. Unfortunately, I know Chad originally wanted to make sure that we could provide these tunable via the community later. We weren't able to do that, as Chad said. Some things don't quite make the end of the list. But you'll definitely be able to save out the different game variants and play with them on your own with your friends outside of matchmaking. But another really key component for us was to have the flexibility to not only be responsive to the community feedback around features they liked or didn't like, Armor Lock and Bloom in particular, and to make sure at the same time that if we did get negative feedback as the way we were approaching these problems, that we weren't locked into a single solution, that we still had flexibility to again, change and iterate and make the game design, the post-launch game, sustained game design, more of a conversation than it is just kind of a dictatorship.
So I got to ask this question. Who's going to take credit with the idea of bringing back the classic Magnum and the Reach multiplayer and the anniversary?
Right here.
I still remember we'd get change lists every now and again with features that were going to make it into U, that weren't going to make it into U. And the Magnum itself kept going in and out, in and out. I remember we got the final list back that was going to be in there. I walked up and gave him a very manly bro hug.
Yeah, there was, I mean, of all the things that I put on my list of things I would love to be able to do, that was one of the ones where, I mean, it was, the timing is perfect. We're releasing a new set of maps that are all remakes. We're releasing the Halo 1 campaign all over again. It seems like an easy win. And it's something that we had talked about doing before at Bungie. Back during the Halo 3 days, we had talked about it, but we weren't really able to come up with an easy solution for it. Like, if we had just included it on one map, for example, then, I mean, of course you're going to want it on every map. So working with Greg, the certified genius, we were able to figure out a way to make sure that you can use that Magnum on every map in the game.
Well, wait a minute. Technically, Max brought back the pistol because in the Hang 'em High remake for Halo 2, right?
Tombstone, that's
right.
right.
Tombstone. If you go into the trench and look beyond the chain link fence, there's crates and crates of M60s.
I'm not going to let him
get to.
I'm not letting him take that. You remember I worked at Certain Affinity at that time. That was actually me as well.
But Chad, you remember at that time we were seriously considering how the hell do we get this thing playable on Hang 'em High?
Yeah, like no, it's absolutely
true. We really
true.
wanted to do it.
Seriously, I've been trying to bring back the Halo 1 pistol since Halo 2.
It's yes, a man with a mission.
The incredible part, I think, about the Halo 1 pistol is that it just ties in all of that anniversary product and allows us to give you classic feeling gameplay on classic maps. It really is, it's the bow at the top of the present.
So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about how hard it was to get it working the way you wanted it, to replicate the classic Magnum.
So it's, in fact, we're still tuning it. I mean, I've even here, as people have been playing the Anniversary Slayer, people have come up and given me feedback, and, you know, we're taking all that down, and we're going to try to make sure to get it right. Again, as I mentioned before, there are certain sacrifices that had to be made. Greg mentioned that a lot of the options aren't user configurable. That's the same with the Magnum, and part of the reason with that is that we didn't really have time to dig into the interface. And the other problem that arose from that was we weren't able to increase the magazine size. So it's still the Halo Reach magazine, but it's, you know, it's 3-shot kill. It's automatic. It maintains accuracy if you pull the trigger, feather the trigger rather, loses accuracy if you hold the trigger down. It's getting to be at about as close as we can get it with the resources we had, and I'm going to just point out right now, the resources we had were Greg. So if there's anything about the title update that you like, you need to give Greg applause right now.
Yeah.
Hello, Greg. And if there's anything you don't like, it's Chad.
Fair enough.
So I know we talked a little bit about that we're announcing, we're releasing beta hoppers in early October, launching the TU in late September. Why did you guys feel it was important to launch some of these features before we released Halo Anniversary?
So going back to something Greg mentioned before, we wanted to be sure that in case it turned out we were insane and the changes we were adding to the title update we're seen negatively by the community, we wanted to be able to, back away, undo things if we absolutely had to. To that end, we also kind of didn't want to say, surprise everybody, the title update is out, Reach is forever changed, have fun. So the beta hopper became our solution for that, wherein we can take this playlist and put a bunch of game types into it, mix it with a bunch of different maps. People will be able to go in and they're like, Zero Bloom was too much for the needle rifle. But when you only take Reach default bloom and reduce it by 15%, it makes headshot weapons reliable without being crazy overpowered and dominating. So that might actually just be fine to become like a Team Slayer standard, things like that. So really, it kind of gives us this realm where we're able to test our ideas with you guys, and you can see what we're thinking and tell us. And if it's popular enough, we can roll it into the rest of matchmaking.
So Chad, I don't know if your comment ended up making it to the game variants we're playing here today, but did you, do they actually have the "this is why we don't do that" comment on the Zero Bloom Slayer? There. So I think that even internally, some folks are a little dubious that Zero Bloom's exactly the right answer, but definitely we want to be responsive to the feedback that right now it's not necessarily tuned to be the best value for the weapons.
Right.
Wait. So I'm curious. So if you play in that playlist and you're saying tell us if you like it or don't, how do you do that?
Why, Max? You go to the Halo Waypoint forums at Halo Waypoint.
No, seriously,
no.
Is that the best way?
Is
there a dedicated place for that?
There is a multiplayer forum.
We actually have a special URL for it, halowaypoint.com/tu, and that'll forward you directly to our forums where you can leave feedback. So I think, speaking of feedback, I think we're going to open it up for some questions. I know there are going to be a lot, so I just want to say ahead of time, let's keep it to one question per person. Okay. That way we're not taking advantage of those in line behind us.
If you try to ask 2 questions, Max will make fun of you.
So go ahead.
No, don't say that.
Yeah.
I will. Go ahead.
First thing I want to say thanks. I've played No Bloom DMR. It handles like a dream. It's awesome.
Is that a question?
No.
Oh.
The questions
in the form of a compliment.
Compliments are fine.
But the question was, as for the maps, is this going to be the last piece of Halo Reach DLC, or might we see some later stuff along the way? It's a long time before Halo 4 comes out.
Yeah, that decision hasn't been made. We're certainly going to continue to support Halo Reach via the matchmaking stuff, via some of the tuning that's happening with the beta hoppers. That decision will be made at a later time based on the usual sort of resources and time and so on.
And interest on the part of the users.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm guessing that how well Halo Anniversary does will probably be a big factor in that decision.
Because it is quite late in the game's life. Games have like a year of life typically, and we'll be pushing onwards as a studio towards Halo 4. But I think there's definitely going to be demand for it. And we kind of expect this to be a shot in the arm for the game, so we expect to see usage go up and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so back in Halo 1, the plasma rifle had a stopping power effect that was pretty funny. I was wondering if that was ever a possibility in the title update, or if you ever thought about instrumenting that back into it?
A possibility, yes, and it was on the grand list, but it did not make the cut.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I feel I'm going to be saying that a lot. I'm going to be sobbing by the time I walk off stage.
Chad, as you said, you really enjoyed the pistol in Halo 1.
Yes. Well, no, I hate it. That's why I'm trying to bring it back.
Okay, well, if that's the case, are you actually going to pick it back up and reach and spawn kill people with it over the DMR?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Are you guys going to, when it comes to it, do you think it's going to change the session of people actually want to use the pistol more on multiplayer than the DMR?
So that's, that's a thing that we have to consider. And since all these settings are configurable, it is possible to create in a game type where there's a 3-shot Magnum and a 5-shot DMR, I assume people would rather go for the Magnum. But when except for Max, but in a world where the 3-shot Magnum is mostly in anniversary game types meant to reflect the original game, the DMR might not even be present, so it will probably be your go-to in its place. It's just a matter of putting it where it's appropriate, and that's something that we're being very considerate of as we work on it.
And I mean, I was just going to say, you know, that's going to be the hard part is figuring. I mean, do you put the pistol in a map as a power weapon? Even. I mean, you imagine people racing for the pistol on the pit instead of the rocket. And so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
As a elite player, I was wondering if they're going to get more customization.
He's asking if elite players, player models will get more customization options.
Also on the list of things that didn't make it was further customization in the armory.
Chad giveth and Chad taketh away.
It's something we really would love to have done. I know it was something we've talked about for a long time. There's just it's very complicated when we talk about what it means for progression, what it means for the overall Reach experience, and I think we're definitely going to be looking at those kinds of things going forward.
Yeah, that's not to say, I mean, we're not saying any of the things or stuff like that is impossible. It is completely possible, just very hard, and we want to make sure that if we do it correctly.
I was wondering, as a classic player, for maps that didn't make the cut to be remade by you guys, would you guys be adding forged versions of those maps into matchmaking if they're good enough?
Well, I mean, if this goes well with the maps that we're releasing with Anniversary, I don't see why we wouldn't do that again. I mean, response has been positive so far, so I would like to see us continue to do things like that. It allows CA to show off how creative they are, and it allows the nostalgic fans to experience, you know, as close as we can give them to the original.
Yeah, and I will say this about Forge. We didn't really talk about it much here, but once again, when we were working on the Defiant pack, we were really pushing the envelope and new to a lot of this stuff. But this time around, now that we've been doing this a little bit longer, we went way further with the Forge support. Much better Forge support. I guess I don't know if people are able to play with it over there, but just a much bigger palette, much more interesting palette to play with this time around.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you might have already mentioned this, but I'm not sure. But for people who play Reach but don't want to buy Anniversary, will they be able to just buy the multiplayer maps
yes.
as a separate thing?
Yes, they will be able to buy them as DLC.
Okay, and would that DLC be come out later like an ODST, or would it be day one?
The date hasn't been firmed yet, but it won't be long at all. It will not be like some crazy 6-month gap. It will be really quick.
One of the things we designed for with Anniversary was making sure that the communities for both Reach and Anniversary were able to play together. And as such, if we hold on to the maps for a length of time, then that defeats that purpose. So,
and we don't want to force people to have to buy something if they're not interested in it. But it's also a way for us to figure out who's crazy because they didn't buy Anniversary. So,
thank you.
Okay. Will you fix assassination lags? Because sometimes when you assassinate somebody, it will just cut it, and you'll still get the medal, you'll still hear the death noise, but it will just cut the animation of you killing him.
Yeah, Chad, you gonna fix that?
I'm trying to remember exactly what the reason is for that happening, but there is a specific reason for the animation canceling. I always breathe a little easier when it does it personally, because that means I'm not going to get shot in the back while I'm doing something flashy. But that is not on the list of things to change.
Yep. Okay.
At least not for this title update. If we happen to do another one, we'll consider it.
Okay.
Well, I was going to ask about Forge support, but you already sort of answered that. So my replacement question will be, was there any desire to stay with the theme of the original maps, or to sort of come up with a new theme? Like, it looks like Beaver Creek looks very similar to Battle Creek, or was there ever any consideration of doing like the lockout to blackout sort of complete change?
Yeah, I would say this time around we were trying really hard to sort of be sensitive to the original, and I think the older, the further you went back and the simpler the aesthetics on the map, on, say, Prisoner, for instance, being true to the original visuals on Prisoner pretty much means we make 3, maybe 4 textures and just plaster everything with the same textures. So we tried to be true to the original, but the more visually distinct the original is, the more we tried to be true to it.
And you know, Max mentioned earlier there were some maps that had multiple iterations. We'll definitely show off some of the concept art. Beaver Creek, for example, at one point was completely mechanical.
Yeah, there was one where it was entirely Forerunner. There was one where you were like inside a glacier and you could see through the ground because it was transparent ice. And we had all sorts of really cool ideas. Certain Affinity did a bunch of really incredible art. And then at the end of the day, we kind of decided that when you look at when you start a game of Slayer and you get that establishing shot of the level, we want it to hit you with nostalgia. And I think at that point we decided to just take the really simple aesthetics from Halo 1 and add flavor to them.
But some other levels have some really radical art. The skybox in one of the unrevealed levels is unbelievable. Just an amazing... Go stand at the window and look at it instead of playing.
You guys
the game,
remember the skybox in Condemned? There's a couple other epic moments.
Yeah.
Well, the nostalgia's there, and the maps.
The other thing I'll add that this time around, I think we understood the effects system a little bit better than we did last time, and we really kind of went over the top with the VFX on some of these, and some of the ones that you haven't seen yet are pretty damn awesome, which I can't talk about.
Yes.
Thanks.
Question from the Podtacular community. Have you guys considered making a firefight map that just is firefight with the Flood and not the Covenant?
So I keep getting asked that, is it in? And so it's not in. But we've definitely talked about it.
We've talked about it. I mean, I know Bungie talked about it when they were working on Firefight and ODST, and it's one of those things that would be really awesome. It's just a matter of building the assets, having the resources, and it just hasn't panned out yet. It's not something that we haven't thought of, though. It would be awesome to do.
Yep. Well, Certain Affinity will totally build it. Just convince these guys. Yeah, we'll do it.
And are there achievements specifically for multiplayer and not just the campaign?
Yes. Yep. Yes, there is actually. Yeah, that was the second question. Max is supposed to make fun of you now.
Yeah. But it was a good one, so I'm going to let you get away with this one. But not you. One question.
I'm wondering how much the title update is just new Megalo hooks, and is any of it touch the campaign or Firefight?
So I'll give the first half of the answer, in that I'll say none of it touches campaign, and I'll leave the rest of that question over to Greg.
So a lot of that actually goes through the game variant, which is pretty much just Megalo hooks, which is what allows us to tune that. Unfortunately, Megalo is not the system that drives either campaign or Firefight, and it's a lot more difficult for us to provide that kind of flexibility for those other experiences.
But there is, there is one thing, the co-op fix for people with 4-gig systems.
Yeah, we're talking about more than that, right? I mean, there were a lot of other features that were added in the title update. I know we have posted those up onto Halo Waypoint, but it does include the fix that allows the people who do not have hard drives to play network now for both campaign and Firefight. We do have some additional bug fixes in there. For issues you may or may not have been running into. We were able to add achievements and really kind of, have a robust achievement offering this time around, which I don't think we necessarily were able to do as well with Defiant. So I think there were just a lot of just polished things we were able to do with Reach, just to make the overall experience better at the same time as supporting the broad anniversary experience in multiplayer.
Thank you.
Yeah, with Halo Anniversary, can you guys speak on the reasoning why you guys aren't making a multiplayer complete disc like ODST had? And as such, is it shipping on one disc?
So Halo Anniversary does ship on one disc, and on November 15th, that disc includes campaign and multiplayer components. They all launch from one menu. There's a bunch of reasons we didn't put all the maps on one disc. One is Reach is still selling, and it's still current. Secondly, they literally would not have fit.
We are out of space.
Yeah,
they're out of space on the disc.
We're using every kilobyte on that disc. It's if we had wanted even one more map, we would have to be a 2-disc game.
I see. Excellent, thank you.
And also part of that I want to add a little bit is the price for Halo Anniversary is $40. Adding another disc to that as part of the manufacturing process does really add to it.
And we had that was one of our prime things when we started this project. We wanted to make it as affordable as possible, and kind of we're still charging money for it, but as much of a gift back to the community as we could do, and still be a business that doesn't go out of business.
So I think we're going to do 3 more questions.
For weapons that are not reliant on headshots, how severe are your concerns for no bloom?
Again, this is why it's not just a toggle. It's actually a scale. So we can say, for example, like one of the standard game types we test on has bloom reduced by 15% on headshot weapons, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you'd be surprised at how much more reliable a weapon like the DMR becomes when just the maximum cone of error just isn't as wide as it could be when you're spamming the trigger or even just not pacing your shots. So it's a matter for us. It is a concern of ours. We want to make sure that all the weapons play nice together. And in a situation where we release a zero bloom game type, it would be a situation where we kind of assume that you're probably not thinking about picking up like an assault rifle or something else anyway.
Thanks for being here. Can you perform assassinations in campaign?
No, sir. That would have been a change to Anniversary Campaign, which kind of went against the principles we started the project with. You can still melee characters in the back, just like you've always been able to, but we didn't add any animations at all. In fact,
all right,
that's the second question.
No. I was just saying thank you.
But don't think I didn't try to suggest an assassination skull to sneak it in there anyway, because I love that stuff.
I love assassinating. It's so much fun. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, guys. Have you thought about putting any sort of in-game feedback system for like the beta hoppers so the community can easily vote in what they like and what they don't like?
So not in terms of like voting or clicking or pressing a button, but waypoint.com and actually the game itself are both ingesting tons and tons of data about what people do, what they quit out of, what they vote on, and so on. So we do it in an automated way, but we absolutely want to get anecdotal and subjective opinions from the community. And again, we'll be tracking that very, very intently once the beta hoppers go live.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just one of those things where, again, like that would be a really cool feature to be able to add, but how do we get the most out of it and how do we implement it? Particularly that last question is really hard since the UI was kind of one of the biggest challenges and it stopped a lot of the things that we wanted to do with the game for the title update.
I mean, there's a lot of ways we collect feedback. Make sure you vote on the forums. Make sure you vote with your gameplay. Is probably going to be the most important vote you can have, right? What you choose to play and what you don't affects how we will manage the sustainment for the game and to try to find appropriate games and maps that fit what people are wanting to play.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And last question. Make it a good one.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
So, like I was saying earlier, I love everything you've done. You really stay true to the community, competitive, casual, everything, and I appreciate it. But I'm just wondering why I'm going to have to go to the local Game Cluck Center or an MLG event to actually, play online, play multiplayer, top tier, and all that stuff, rather than just including Xbox Live in this package.
I don't quite understand the question.
Why isn't there Xbox Live?
In what?
Anniversary, multiplayer.
There is.
There is.
Versus?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's fully supported. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly like Reach.
Yeah,
if you go into films.
Yeah, are you?
I think that one was a gimme.
I've got some bad information, my friend.
Chad put it in.
Channel over. Mic down.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming out. Really appreciate it. We'll be around, hanging out by the stage. If you want to come up and chat. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody.
One more thing. If any of you guys are over at the main PAX building, make sure to check out Certain Affinity's other game, Crimson Alliance, at the XBLA. It's very cool.